Question Lane. Solving problems through the process of questions and answers.
Question Lane is a podcast where the goal is to solve problems through the process of questions and answers. Today's guest is an author, speaker, and filmmaker based in Atlanta, Georgia. As a speaker, he is often called upon to discuss religion and the role it plays in the current condition of people classified as black. Today's series of questions and answers will be centered on Area 7, aka religion, specifically his book, Holy Lockdown, Does the Church Limit Black Progress? Our guest, Jeremiah Camara. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What would you like to be referred to as, Mr. Camara, Jeremiah, any other?
It doesn't matter. You can call me Jeremiah. It doesn't matter.
Perfect. We'll go with that. Is there anything you want us to know about you before we get started?
No, I think you summed it up. I just got my latest film on that's about to come out. I don't know what platform it's going to be on yet because, they've Netflix have had it for quite some time. But they're still, I guess, molding it over. And so I'll know soon enough, I guess, where I can tell you guys something.
What's the name of that film going to be?
The name of the film is Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism in America.
Okay, cool. We'll be on the lookout for that for sure. So to limit confusion and kind of keep the conversation flowing smoothly, I'll read an excerpt and then, just to provide context and then proceed with the question for you to answer. Will that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. All right, so in the introductory section of the book, you wrote...
Which book?
Holy Lockdown.
Okay.
You wrote, I may even be regarded by some as a lost soul who has not yet experienced the true spirit of God. And that was in reference to you, having a critique about religion and the role that it plays within the lives of African Americans. When you use the word true spirit, what exactly did you mean?
I don't really know what that means. That was over. That was 15 years ago. So you evolve as time goes, and I should have put the article or the in front of it because I don't subscribe to God's plural. It's not. I put God in that kind of implied that there is one. So as an evolved thinker, I would kind of word that differently.
Okay. Yeah, because further on in the introductory section you wrote, for the record, I'm not an atheist, nor am I taking aim at any particular religion. I'm simply demonstrating love. You are sometimes critical of those you love, and for the love of my people gives me the courage to share with them what I feel is of importance. Can you kind of talk about love and what does that mean? Because that's often used as some type of motivating factor for sharing religion.
Well, again, let's evolve. As far as the fact where I say I'm not an atheist, I don't like labels. I like how you started the show, classified as black people, because we often are inclined to create the category of other, often as people. So as far as love, I don't have a real deep definition of love. My love is, I guess, in the context of how people perceive it, a deep feeling towards people. I have a deep feeling towards all people, especially our people, because I would say people that you refer to as classified as blacks because of what we've gone through. So I don't really have a deep textbook definition of love. I would just say it's a deep feeling. I care a lot about blacks people. I want blacks to succeed. I want us to be successful. So that's what I meant. I don't want to get into textbook type definitions of things, spirit or love or something like that.
Well, just reflecting back on some of my experiences, growing up in the church, that's always been used as a way to kind of reach out to people as they classify them as lost souls. So for me, I thought about love. I don't really have a definition for love per se. I think about um, I think about friends, and for me, I have three simple ways that I view a friend, and that would determine, how much I guess love I would exhibit towards them. And I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see what you have to say about these three tenets.
I
So the
agree.
first,
With
so the
that so far. Mm-hmm.
So the first tenet that I would say to go towards what a friend is for me is someone that has the ability to stand up to me, and I have the ability to stand up to them in private. The second part is the ability to stand up for each other in public. And then the third part is being able to stand by each other in a crisis. Do you think those three tenets would be something, I guess, worth showing love towards if a person
I love
exhibits
it.
those three?
Absolutely, I love it. I have no problem with it. You line up 10 people, they'll have three different tenants, you know. But according to yours, I have no problem with it. Absolutely.
Perfect, perfect. So, you also wrote about being disturbed about black people praising and producing little. What is the typical response you hear from people who have an issue with you describing high praise and low production?
I really haven't had a lot of backlash, to be honest with you. And I'm not sure why. I guess, when you present things to people and they hear it and it makes sense to them, they still will cling to their beliefs because they don't want to experience that cognitive dissonance, that disharmony comes with possessing two different thoughts existing simultaneously. So they just rather be comfortable and stay in their own little, world that they've been in for years. But so I haven't had any real backlash to a lot of things that I've said. But I do feel like we need to evolve, in our thinking. You can't continue to pray and to do the things that you've been doing for decades, for centuries, and then expect different things to happen. It's just not going to happen. Tomorrow, where we're going to be. We're going to be packing the church up. The church, I think, is a great robber of time. It's a great robber of intelligence. It's a great robber of our money. It steals our money every week. We give it to them, the victim has to come willingly, and we come willingly. But it's also tainted by a sense of coercion, and in the sense of if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. So there's this deep-seated fear that we have. People go to church not so much because they want to. They go to church because they're afraid not to go to church. So I just think that our thinking has to come around to the point where we realize we step back from it, take a step back and look and assess, what is it doing? What has it done? And blacks are continuing to hover around the bottom of so many areas of society, but yet are continuing to be, some of the highest praises on earth. Especially our brothers and sisters in Africa. Seems like religion is declining all over the world, except for Africa. But I've seen some people, from Africa. I saw a couple of videos the other day. People send me various things, and there's a couple of people from Ghana that seem to be realizing that this thing is a con. And so that's happy. That's good news. I'm happy to see that, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, it's definitely logical what you said, for sure. You wrote, most would agree that many problems facing us are a direct result of the injustice of a racist system, American racist system at large. I've spoken to quite a few pastors, and their responses has been, black people are mistreated in America due to us falling away from God and the Word. Have you heard this sentiment before, and what is your opinion on a claim like that?
I think it's erroneous. They say America is going to hell because of the rise of secularism, and because of our lack of being in touch with God and all. That's ridiculous. These ministers ought to know better. If you're well traveled, but I guess their circle, they don't run into people that are non-believers or that are atheists or people like that. But that's my circle, and I just spoke in front of about a crowd about 750 people last week, and they all think like we all have similar thoughts. Put it like that. And these are great people, beautiful people that are making a difference in society. You have teachers, attorneys that are making sure church and state are separate. When you attribute the decline in black people or anyone else to a rise in secularism or our so-called pulling away from this so-called God, I think it's crazy because you got to remember that religious belief was the driving justification behind slavery. That was the driving justification behind it. So, when we talk about how terrible this world is, you remember it was a time in this country where we had slavery, where people were enslaved, and you want to talk about how bad the world is now. Blacks pretty much can go pretty much where they want to go now. You were limited to a plantation back on the day, and were subjected to all type of abuse. And so when you talk about these are the last days because brothers are, they were saying that back in the 1700s, that these were the last days, the 1800s. So, this is all coming from man. None of this is any type of sacred or holy, notions from anything that exists that's passing it down to humanity. This is all man.
Asking about dates and asking about how do you measure that outcome is always something that stops them in their tracks, from my experience. But you wrote about liberation must be central to the church's doctrine. Race is relevant because we primarily live, work, and worship with other blacks. Therefore, it seems logical that we should concern ourselves with each other. What are some ways that you suggest that the church implement concepts of liberation?
The church in liberation, I think that's an oxymoron. I don't see the church doing anything as far as liberation is concerned. You're trapping people. It's the opposite of liberation, if you ask me. Church is very deceptive because it teaches people that prayer, that worship and praise are pragmatic solutions for solving problems. And from an empirical standpoint, we can look around and know for a fact that is not the case. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't be in the predicament that we're in. So I don't see anything as far as liberation is concerned. We have this God, that that is promoted as a healer and a provider, but people are marred by what happens to them. So if gods were truly real, then their greatest service to humanity would be in the realm of prevention. It makes little sense to say, this hurricane came, but thank God I didn't, I was in an accident, but thank God I didn't. It's crazy. Why? Where's your God in the realm of prevention? Why did he allow you to have a stroke in the first place? Why did he allow your son to be killed in the first place? If you don't have a God that can stop bullets, what good is he?
His ways are greater than our ways. That's what they would say. That's what they would say.
Yeah. How long have we been hearing that? His ways are greater than our ways. Let me tell you, No gods have ever duked it out, so to speak, on a battlefield, ever. It's the people who always suffer. It's the people who always lose their lives. Allah and this so-called God has never been in a fight. It's the people who lose their limbs. It's the people who suffer casualties. It's never the gods. So that's why you know that all this was invented by human beings. God is simply a character in a book. That's it. He's a character in a book because you know about this guy based off of a book. Where he lives, what he likes, where he goes, where he who he likes or whom he likes. Who his closest associates are, who he has encounters with, and all this type of stuff. You learn all of that from a book. Moses, but if you didn't have this book, there would be no Moses, there'd be no Abraham, be no Adam and Eve, there would be no Jesus, no virgin birth, there would be no hell, no Satan, no heaven, none of these things. So that essentially means that if you take the Bible away, you essentially take these people's beliefs away, because the only source, the main source, I should say, where you gather your information is in the Bible. So if you don't have the Bible, essentially you don't have all these notions that you possess in the first place.
You wrote, it has also been scrutinized for the lack of practicality within its sermons, high emotional behavior, whether at church, in relationships, or in confrontations, and clouds one's reasoning. So among other reasons, I believe that preachers preach this way because they don't necessarily have practical examples of people who are productive other than people who are in the church and they're like pastors.
Absolutely.
So do you think that's an accurate opinion?
Absolutely. See, listen, man, when you're a preacher, you get your butt kissed all day. Preachers get there. No, who's going to go up against them? It's going to be yes, okay, boss, sure. You walking around with these expensive clothes on, driving this expensive car, heading this expensive church. You get your butt kissed all day. They're not around anybody else but butt kissers. They don't want to be around thinking people who think freely. They'd rather be around, people who agree with them all day. So they're never in these circles. But if you think about it, that the church is a con. There are many different parts of it that we know that it's a con. See, because people tend to protect their beliefs and their ideology to the point that they completely omit the main elements that should be supporting their stance, and that's logic and reason and proof and evidence. When you compel someone to accept something without proof or evidence, that's really, in my opinion, a form of mental abuse. Your brain functions in a way that it's an input and output system. It functions in a way to, different parts of the brain control different body functions. Okay? But the only way that the brain can be perverted, you look at that word pervert. Pervert means to alter the course of its original intent. So the only way that the brain can be perverted, and that's what I think religion is, it's a perversion of the brain. Because the brain, the only way that it can be perverted to believe in things without proof is through consistent indoctrination. That's why you have church on Saturday, on Wednesday, sometimes on Friday, on Sunday, of course. You have to be consistently indoctrinated. If someone came to you, say 15 years ago, and they came to you and they said, hey, Jesus is real, he died for you, he's been dead, Brother Alonzo, and he's coming back after 2,000 years. And he loves you, and he lives in heaven, and he had 12 disciples and stuff like that. You wouldn't necessarily carry that with you for the rest of your life, be something that you would draw on, because it was just a matter of factly. Someone told it to you like they told everything else. You remember some real big stuff, man. I remember my grandfather told me, never do this. I remember my grandmother told me, always do this. But if someone just, happened to tell you that something like this, you wouldn't hold it as a dear to you, something that you would always recall and pull in times of crisis. My point is, your brain would let it go. It would just let it go, because believing in that story is not a requirement. It's not a biological requirement. You don't need that to survive. You don't need that to stay alive or to thrive. You need food. You need temperature. You need some form of shelter. You need some form of protection from the weather. You need water. Those are requirements, not belief. Belief is not a biological requirement. So the only way that your brain can accept these perversions to believe in things without proof is through consistent indoctrination. That's why they call them preachers. They preach. Preaching is saying the same thing over and over and over that you've heard since you were 5 years old. You go to church, you hear the same thing. They start the service, oh, God is good. Give him praise, y'all. All that same old redundant stuff over and over. And then the music comes in. It's like a scene in the movie. The music is really like the hype man in rap. How you got the hype man in rap? Yeah! That's what the music does in church. It does that. The brain is like Central Park. If Central Park was completely left alone without any human activity for hundreds of thousands of years, it would go right back to its natural state, period. So that it's a con job. It's so many other elements that would prove that the religion is a con. It's a con by man. The biggest proof that we know it's a con is because it's not deed-based. It's belief-based. See, religion is belief-based. Why would anyone be more concerned about what I believed in as opposed to how I treated them? You got to be a fool to concern yourself with what I believe in as opposed to how I treat you.
Well, you can't measure belief, You can measure deeds.
There you go. But belief is simply an acceptance that something is true based off of what you heard or read or what somebody told you. That's all. But there's no evidence. There's nothing factual in it. So that's why it's a con. Now, with these beliefs come certain assignments that you have to carry out. You got to go to church. You got to praise. You got to pray. But most of all, you got to tithe. If there was no money at all to be made in preaching, you wouldn't hear anything at all about religion if there was no money in it. No one would have a church, nothing. You wouldn't hear anything about it. We would just be human beings doing what we do.
What is your response to pastors and other churchgoers who say, hey, Mr. Camara, you don't say anything when you give money to the state of Georgia or the state of Florida when you have to pay your corporate income tax? You don't be concerned with what happens. You're not concerned.
Back up. The operative word is have to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tithe.
Well, this is their.
That makes no sense. That makes no sense because the operative word is have to. Now you don't have to pay these things to the state, but there are consequences.
Mm-hmm.
See, There are no consequences to not tithing. I have not tithed since in what 37. Let me see, about 37, close to 40 years. Put it like that. I will never tithe. You mean to tell me this preacher walking around with a Mercedes, a Bentley, wearing $2,000 suits and up, really more than that, and then I'm sitting here raggedy, struggling, trying to pay my bills, and I'm going to give you my money? Are you crazy? I don't think so. It's a con job. Well, don't talk about my glory because you don't know my story. Man, get out of here. Everybody has a story. We all got a damn story. You name me anybody over 40 without a story. I want to see them. Life tenure brings you a story. We all have it. Life tenure gives you a story. We all had to undergo or experience that hero's journey. All of us had to. So I'm not impressed with that. We all had to go through that hero's journey, where, you encounter something, where you get, a call to an adventure or whatever, and then you go through some type of experience, and then you cross a certain threshold, and then you get deep in it. You go through the abyss. You might be overcoming drugs, or, you're at the crossroads, and then you transform, and then you atone for what you did. Then you return to tell the people what you've experienced. Hell, anybody with certain life tenure has experienced that. You're not the only one with a story. That's a con job. And we need to stop letting these preachers con us and take our money and rob us of our most important resource, and that's time. You already worked all through the week. You worked all week. Now you're sitting up in church. After the money that you made from working at a job you probably don't like, you're sitting up in church giving the money away. When your child is up there struggling with math and with science. I always tell people one of the best things you could do is give 10% of your money to a tutor to teach your child who you know is struggling and that you are unable to help yourself.
Wow, 10% to a tutor. Wow, that's an excellent suggestion.
That is one of the smartest things that you can do. Super smart.
That is really good. You referenced Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power when explaining how emotion can be counterproductive when striving for power. I've concluded that white people, they strive for power, especially when they're competing with non-white people. What do you think black people are striving for under the influence of the church?
Well, nothing, really. They're trying to go to heaven. See, the church pushed you in the then and there instead of the here and now. All we have is right now. Now, right now, according to my clock, what time is it? It's 10:32, okay? 10:33 does not exist. It just constitutes potential time, but it hasn't been actualized yet. It hasn't arrived, so it doesn't exist. Your brain is incapable of seeing the future unless it has some evidence to point to. Like, for instance, people say, well, what am I going to have faith in now? Have faith in those things that have already showed you that they're faith-worthy. I have faith that the sun will rise tomorrow. I have faith that the sun will set today.
That sounds like what's this guy's name? What's the comedian that died in her oh my God, I forgot his name, but it was a comedian who talked about worshiping the sun.
Well, I mean that was that the sun worship preceded this, but it wasn't any money in that. Somebody had to personify the sun. That's why they call it the Son of God. When you see sun on water, that's nothing but Jesus walking on water. When you see the sun glistening on water, they had to personify it. They had to take this God and anthropomorphize this God so you can make money. I don't know what black people are striving for, but I know that when you put your hands together and you bend down in prayer and you acquiesce, you already getting in a slave pose just by having your hands clenched together with your head bowed. You're in a slave position right there. And now you're expecting godly intervention to intervene in some type of dilemma that you're in that's going to take humans to solve. Human dollars, human effort, human sacrifice, human cooperation, all of these things. So you've already expected godly intervention. That's black people's problem. We live in the clouds. We are overly religious to the degree where it is very damaging. We believe things without evidence and proof. Our brains have essentially been perverted. And I don't know what, I mean, you have a perverted brain when you are very energetic in worshiping the religion that was forced on you by your conquerors. You have to be pretty damn crazy to do something like that. Now, you'll continue to justify it over and over because you got so much invested in it. You got time invested in it. You got money invested in it. And then you got your pride in it. You don't want to necessarily be wrong. You just can't accept the fact that what you've been doing is erroneous and crazy. And you've been worshiping to an invisible product. You don't want to accept that because you've been doing it so long. That really hurts your feelings. But you got to evolve, Brother Lonzo. You can't worry about that. That drop is not from a 15-story building. That drop is less than 2 inches, if you even call it a drop. It's really an ascension rather than a descension.
It's false evidence appearing real. That's fear.
Right. The false evidence appearing real, that's fear. And faith is false advertisement in the head.
The comedian I was talking about was George Carlin.
Right, right.
But so we spoke about this a little bit earlier when you talked about how music is used to kind of create an emotional atmosphere of guilt. From your understanding, where did this come from? Because I've been to other churches, different white churches and different denominations and different religions, and I've never seen music used to such a degree other than the church that I grew up in, which is Church of God in Christ.
Oh, wow. That's some serious music right there. Kojic. Wow.
Hello.
Yeah. But listen, man, we have different cultures. Black people have, they take African rhythms, they bring them over. It's highly syncopated. And rhythms were used a lot in our, throughout our culture. Culture is part of your rhythm. The food that you eat, how close the water was to your village. What were your rules of mating, rules of engagement? That's what makes a culture. What was your climate like, etc. So we had a culture that was heavily immersed in music, still do, if you want to call today's stuff music. I like a lot of it. I love today's culture. I love the youth. I love, the technology. Really, I love everything. The only thing that I just really can't really seem to embrace fully yet, maybe because I don't have the exposure, is the music. And a lot of it's just so computerized, but that's another subject. But, music is a big part of it. You could take a preacher who really might be struggling in his sermon, but he could bust out in a song. Bishop Paul S. Morton was like that. He might be, struggling in a sermon, but then he could sing. That's what it is. It's entertainment. You get a big dose of entertainment when you go to church. It's like when you watch a film. There are certain films that are very engaging. They get your heart to race. They get sweat to pop off your head. Your thumbs are twitching. You having palpitations. You're breathing heavy because of this movie. It's the same way with the church. You go there, and he convinces you that you are so low that you need this stuff. If you went into the church like, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm great, I can accomplish this, I can accomplish that, what good is it? When someone comes at you to start proselytizing to you or try to get you to believe a certain way or to come, to my church or whatever, the first question you should ask that person is, what's wrong with me? What's so amazing about you that's not amazing about me? Where can you go that I can't go? What can you do that I can't do? What can you achieve that I can't achieve? Now, the evidence is not only absent from Christianity, but the evidence is absent in people who believe in Christianity. You can't look at people and say, oh, man, I know Jesus is in you. Nobody stands out to that degree. We're all subjected to the same thing. We're all subjected to the universal laws out here that exist. And that's just the facts. There's nothing special about you that would make me want to worship what you're worshiping. Nothing standing out. You're struggling. You got arthritis. Your bills are due. Your car bill is due. You live in paycheck to paycheck. Your children are wayward. I don't see anything in you that would make me want to do what you're doing. But I can say this. Now, this is a hypothesis. I haven't developed it into a theory yet. But I think people who are non-believers really fare better in the world. And I say that based off of the premise that there's no anxiety. We don't care about what would Jesus do. We're living our lives in the present. We're not anxious or have any anxiety about some zombie coming back after 2,000 years to save us. We don't trip on stuff like that. So we're free from those types of things that many people that are in religion are trapped in. You're sitting up scared to death. You're living your life afraid. And then you're finding some redemptive quality in being scared. Well, I fear the Lord. That's crazy to live your life in fear. Do you know how much you'll be affected, how limiting fear is? And this is what I'm saying also, getting back to that point, of a preventer. We say that prevention is worth a pound of cure. We even hire security. We install, ring on our doors to prevent things from happening.
Yeah.
So why would your God be a promoter and a provider? The more powerful than being a so-called provider is being a preventer. No matter what kind of God you had, it didn't keep your butt off that slave ship. It didn't keep you from being enslaved for hundreds of years. You needed a preventer, someone that was going to drown that ship when it was on the way over. If he's not a preventer, or she, or it, or whatever you want to call it, what's the point? So you can continue to praise after your house has been blown down by the tornado. See, this is what I'm saying. Our brains are just warped. They're perverted. Our brains are not really capable of living in the there and then, not unless it's indoctrinated. It has to be indoctrinated consistently.
I'm a 90s baby, so I was born in the 90s, so I might not have a lot of experience in terms of comparing a lot of pastors to, the preachers that I grew up under. But your concept about eating up the clock, preachers using fillers, can you talk about that? That was like a real accurate way of describing how a lot of pastors, it's like regurgitated rhetoric. And oftentimes you can't really apply a lot of concepts to your life because it's more like metaphors and similes and things that really are not applicable. Can you talk about how preachers run up the clock, essentially trying to just fill up a 30-minute lecture with 10 minutes worth of material?
Well, I was in seminary school, and one of the first things they tell you is to preach to the itching ear. In other words, don't tell the people what they need to hear. Tell the people what they want to hear. Don't change the landscape. You ever watch the Flintstones? You ever see the cartoon The Flintstones?
I know what it is, but I haven't seen it though.
Well, if you watch the cartoon, whenever they're chasing that scene just keeps, they pass by the same tree, the same rock every time. The landscape doesn't change, even though it's a long chase. That's the same way with the preacher. He doesn't change the landscape that you're familiar with, because blacks don't want the learning. They want the burning, as they used to say. We want somebody going to come in here, make us sweat and shout and jump out our seats. We don't care about this intellectual crap. That's not what we're there for. We want this evangelic fervor that's coming and arising from the preacher. They eat up the clock because they tell you the same stuff over and over again. And then when they get in trouble, you can always go to Job. Job, who was always the I would say the back, the story that you keep in your back pocket, just in case. Job is that rainy day when your sermon is falling apart. You can always pull out Job.
He's the big joker in spades, right?
He's the big joker. And all these nice round numbers, 7,000 and 10,000 and all, 605. You can't see through that as an adult, that these things are stories, that they're allegories. You can't see through that. I don't even think you want to see through it because you're afraid not to see through it. It's really pitiful to be that damn afraid in life. But I understand. Don't get me wrong. I get it. I understand why you're that fearful. I understand. I really do. But we have to evolve. We can't keep doing this. When you're in a black neighborhood, when you see the place littered with liquor stores and churches, which are one and the same thing. They both get you drunk when you engage them.
I agree. I mean, that's always been a question of mine growing up. I was just like, man, there's a church on every corner, and I'm not even in. I grew up in Florida, man, so it's churches everywhere. But what would your response be to people who say, preachers who say that they repeat these sermons because the congregants haven't grasped and applied the concepts that they preached about? So
how do they know that?
I've heard that. It's been said to me.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but how do they know what the congregants have grasped or haven't grasped? How do they know that?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Have the congregants come up to you and say, preacher, I heard you preach for 3 hours. I still don't get it. Who does that? It's not rocket science. All they're telling you essentially is to keep the faith and keep worshiping. That's pretty much it. And then they prance up and down stage. T.D. Jakes was brilliant in the sense of his theatrics. He'd get on the floor. He'd crawl. He's sweating. His collar gets loose. But if you look at his family, what makes him so amazing? That's not amazing about anybody else. He's got the same issues with his daughter, with his son. I mean, There's nothing amazing about any, but we all are subjected to the same things, okay? It's called life tenure. It's called life. If I go outside and it's 71 degrees for me, it's going to be 71 degrees for you too. If it's raining on my head, it's going to be raining on your head. There's nothing distinguishable about you. In fact, religion and superstition are indistinguishable. How do you tell religion from superstition? How? You carry a rabbit's foot in your car, you carry a Bible in the car. You could hope and pray, or you could wish upon a lantern, a genie. You know, you keep rubbing on that genie and expect keep rubbing on that lantern and expect the genie to pop up. You keep reading the Bible, you expect something miraculous to happen. You keep tithing and you expect something miraculous to happen based off of your tithes. Like Creflo said, tithing is your covenant connector. This is silly. This is immature. You're misguided. And that's the part. That's where religion really fails us. It misguides us. It's like magic. It gets us to think along the wrong grooves. It's a misguiding element in society. You just think along the wrong grooves. That's it.
You wrote, I was going to say, you wrote something that I thought was really fascinating when you said the next time we attend church, well, you were just speaking in general, but the next time we attend church, when the service has ended, let us think about whether we truly learned something new. What do you think if there was some type of platform like Yelp where people wrote reviews about each sermon, do you think that would negatively affect the attendance of churches in the black community, or what do you think it would just
if someone had to recite what they'd learned?
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to do that. Absolutely, it would be. Listen, I've done it plenty of times. Matter of fact, I got some YouTube videos about it. But just go anywhere. Go to any church. And then when they come out, and say, what'd you learn? As a matter of fact, you can go even further, okay? Ask them what have they name 3 things that they learned in their entire life of going to church that they would not have learned in everyday life experience. And you'll hear the crickets.
I don't know. It's in college, I studied economics, so, there was a theoretical aspect to it, and then there was an applied aspect to it where you had to apply the concepts in a numerical form to different examples that were brought up on tests. I just imagine what would that be like if we had to attest after every sermon, where people had to get a 70% in order to come back the next week.
But there's nothing to listen. You can't learn fiction. What is it to learn? People used to amuse me. They say, "What are you doing, man?" "Oh, I'm studying the Bible." I mean, that's like studying the unicorn. Now, listen. Are there good things in the Bible that you can learn from? Absolutely. Anybody knows that. If you go to your bookstore, wherever you live, whether it be Borders, Barnes and Nobles, or the African American bookstore, or whatever, Book Nook, Half Price Books, there's not a book on the shelf, not one, without something valuable in it that you can learn something from. I mean, you could look at Hansel and Gretel and learn not to wander off by yourself. You could read the 3 Little Pigs and learn about trust issues and opening your door to strangers and not, it'd be crazy to say that there's nothing valuable in the Bible. It's full of so many stories. They're allegories. Allegories are intended for you to learn something. But these allegories go a step further in the sense that they really affect you on a visceral level. They turn your stomach. You can't read the Bible in totality and then come out and say, oh, what a fantastic book. Oh, that was such a great book. Oh, that was just a great book. You can't do that. unless your comprehension is not, up to standard. You have trouble comprehending. If you that book, that is I think it was, they attribute Isaac Asimov, a scientist, to saying that the Bible well read is the greatest case for atheism. You cannot, if you read the Bible, and you have to be, as a righteous person, a person who cares about humanity, turned off. The millions upon millions upon more millions of people that were slaughtered and killed, children, women, livestock. It is a horrible book in terms of its treatment of human beings and animals. It's crazy, because if this so-called God could have really seen the future, then Noah would have came first. Obviously, he couldn't see the future, because the first set of humans, they messed up. He had to, and then this whole thing about the animals in the art. You got to grow up, Alonzo. You people got to grow up. We got to stop this. Pull away from that. All we have is each other. That's what the good news is. The good news is that there is no God that we've seen and have no evidence of, and therefore we have each other. If I treated you like a God, I would never raise a gun to you. If I treated a woman like a goddess, I'd never call her the B word. How do you love something, allegedly, that you've never seen and have more reverence and respect for it than you do the people who you live with and the people who you're around?
And that when you referenced the slaughter of humans and animals, it reminded me of the case that just I think it was like a month ago, the Botham Jean case. Are you familiar with that case?
Absolutely.
Now, to a certain degree, when I first saw her, Botham Jean's brother, Brant Jean, forgive the police officer who shot his brother unjustly, I thought to myself, wow, this guy's if you want to forgive, why don't you do it, at home? But then when I saw him ask for a hug, and actually hug
that was to me, man, I don't know what that was about. That may have been jungle fever. I don't know. Could have been something more to it than that. But they call it a personal relationship.
The judge did it as well. So
right. They call it a personal relationship, right? And keep that crap personal then. Did you forgive her for sexting, for messing around with a married guy? You didn't even forgive her for that.
Did you forgive her for being a self-admitted racist? I'm not calling her a racist. She admitted that she was.
She admitted it, right. Did you forgive her for not asking your brother to put his hands up, get down on the ground, put your hands where I can see him, and call for backup? I don't know where all the forgiveness came from. See, this is Christianity. Like I said, your brain is perverted. I know our time is coming close. Before we end, I'll let you get a few more questions in. Whoever's listening, they can visit me at JeremiahCamara.com. I'll keep you posted. Join our I'm stuttering here. Visit JeremiahCamara.com and join our page to become a member. I'll keep you posted on various events and stuff like that. You can also check out my series on YouTube, which is Slave Sermons. And like I said, I've got the film Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism, coming out. And that film it attempts to explain how the beliefs in a biased supreme being during colonial times led to beliefs in supreme human beings. and how these beliefs work their way into the legal system, ultimately turning racism into an institution. So I just want to get that out to your people so they could, have that. If you want to write me at slavesermons at Gmail. That's plural, slavesermons at gmail.com or JeremiahCamara.com. You can reach me.
For sure. We'll be sure to include those links in the description. So just two more things. One is, do you have any books that you would suggest that would increase productivity or help us make more money or just open our minds up about critical thinking?
I would say people search on their own. I can't suggest, search. Like they say, knowledge is for those who seek it. And you'll run, there's so many books I can name, but search, because I don't know specifically what people are looking for. It may be something looking for more economic related, as far as their finances is concerned. Most of our issues are money, and we're giving all our money to the church. I would say this here, man. The best thing that black people can do for the blacks as a whole is to get yourself together as an individual. That's the best thing you could do. Be the best that you can be. And if everybody did that, it affects the whole. It has a positive effect on the whole of people. But there are many, many books. I don't want to, even my own, because it might not be, you might not be at that point in life. You might need something else. Strive. I would encourage people to strive, to find out, search for what it is that you need at this specific time in your life, and then find the most appropriate book that you think can help you.
Well, I ask, because, there's been so much indoctrination in terms of religion. And for me, it took me, graduating from college and really, getting into the business world for me to think about, what do I need and what are some things I should read. And for me, the reason I started the podcast in the first place is to, provide some, if my friends or my family or anybody that interact with me say, hey, Alonzo, man, how do I get some suggestions on economics or business or race? I just say, hey, man, just go to my website. I got a few suggestions there. It might start you off. But,
right.
That's why I ask, because some people don't know.
I would say this. In terms of getting unglued from religion, I would really recommend my book, Holy Lockdown. Does the Church Limit Black Progress? It's a starter kit. It really is. It's a starter book to get you to thinking outside of the box. There are some books that by Walter Williams, that I would suggest, the historical origins of Christianity. That's going to get you in a more deeper part of your journey. But there's so many books, man. There's just so many books that you could read. There's a book called Caesar's Messiah. That tells you the whole story. It's about Joseph Atwill. By Joseph Atwill. And it tells you the game, how Jesus is a carbon copy of many saviors that came before him. There are so many books like that it would just, when you Google something, you want to try to find a book, Google something where you're not Googling in a biased way, like, how do we know Christianity is true? Because you're going to come up with, listen, man, you could Google why cigarettes are good for you. You're going to find a lot of stuff. Why cocaine is good for you. If you Google why cocaine is good, you're going to find a lot of stuff on it. A lot. So
all right.
There's always perspectives, coming from different places. But just be, non-biased and impartial, and search, because I don't know where we're headed. If we keep on with this religion, we're going to stay exactly where we are.
Mm-hmm. All right, so just again, so we'll put your link to your website, and also, hey man, just let us know whenever you have the movie come out for Holy Hierarchy, because I definitely would be interested in reading that and reviewing that for sure.
No doubt about it. Appreciate you, Brother Alonzo. Thank you,
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
No doubt, man. Peace.
Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay up to date for more videos by clicking the bell notification icon and following our social media. For any of the people, groups, companies, or videos that were referenced in this video, don't forget to check the description and or the pinned comment section. The Question Lane, solving problems through the process of questions and answers.